Which player props should you bet this Sunday? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another NFL Week 7 player prop video. This is the video where I give you my favorite player props of the week. We use Outlier and my knowledge of the matchups and the players to combine for some great trends to bet in Week 7. If that sounds good, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL player prop picks here on the BLV. Let me know in the comments any parlays, any player props that you are betting this Sunday. This is exclusively the Sunday slate. If you want more bets from me in terms of player props, spreads, totals, and anything else, you can head over to Patreon. Link in the description for my Patreon. It's $10 a month for all of my bets that I'm actually making to help you guys make some money. Now, let's make some money with some player props. My 15 favorite picks of Week 7. And you guys know how it works. We look at Outlier to determine the trends. Anthony Richardson, I love to fade him, especially coming off of an injury. Why? Well, a repeat injury is also fairly likely, but the fact that Richardson is just terrible at completing passes, I'm just going to play into that. You can get under 16.5 pass completions for Anthony Richardson at minus 115, and I love this. Why? A lot of different reasons. First of all, he can't complete passes. His completion percentage is awful. They don't attempt a lot of passes in Indianapolis. Most of his passes are down the field and deep and not underneath. So even the range and the area of the field that he's attacking is harder to complete. And then you're talking about, okay, wide receiver injuries. Josh Downs, questionable. Alec Pierce, questionable. Michael Pittman, questionable. And you may say, Mitch, they're all going to play. Yes, I think you're right. But they're all beat up. That doesn't exactly help against a defense in Miami that's actually been pretty good against the pass all year long. They're a top 10 pass defense in the NFL. I think Richardson will struggle to find completions once again. Last game against Pittsburgh, 3 completions before he got hurt. A repeat injury, again, is fairly likely here. 10 completions against Chicago in a game that they won. 17, right? And he actually got hurt in that game as well. 17 completions in a loss against the Packers where they were trailing for pretty much the entire game. I think right from the start against Malik Willis. 9 completions against the Texans. And then last year, 9 completions against the Titans. So you look at Anthony Richardson, he's been pretty awful so far this season. His overall accuracy has been arguably the worst in football, and I'm just going to continue to play into that. So Richardson, I like him to go under 16.5, whether he completes the game or not. Next up, we're going to go with Kyle Pitts, our old reliable under 3.5 receptions. I don't know why they keep hanging this up there because, yeah, he had 7 catches on Thursday night in a wild shootout where they won 36-30. But otherwise, Kyle Pitts in 10 of his last 11 games, that is 91% of the time, has gone under 3.5 catches. And as you guys can see, 3 is basically his number. They scored 38 against Carolina. Kyle Pitts had 3 catches. He's not really a big part of the offense. It's Drake London. It's Darnell Mooney. It's Bijan. It's Tyler Algier. It's not Kyle Pitts, right? 0 against the Saints. 2 against the Chiefs. 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. And this is dating back to last year, obviously, right? So this year, he's done it once. Congratulations. He had a great game against the Bucs. But 10 of the last 11, dating back to last year, he has not had over 3.5. It's pretty simple. This is mostly a numbers play. But on top of that, the Seattle Seahawks, Julian Love's a good safety. I don't hate their linebackers. Dodson, Baker, they're all right. McDonald likes to pack the middle of the field, and I think he'll do that in this game. And when you talk about the Seahawks, they have 2 injuries at corner, which Drake London, Darnell Mooney, McLeod, whoever, these guys are going to take advantage of those matchups on the outside. So I think This isn't a tight end game. This isn't a Kyle Pitts game. This is a Drake London affair. This is a Darnell Mooney game. So I expect a shootout. I just expect Pitts to probably put up his typical 3 catches, maybe for explosives, maybe even touchdowns, but not exactly a volume game for Kyle Pitts. Next up, we're going to go with Geno Smith plays, and I like a couple different ones here. I like the passing yards and the completions, so that's why I left his full thing up, and this is what you guys can see on Outlier, which I'm going to put the link to Outlier so you guys can potentially sign up if you like. Totally your choice, just showcasing what they do here. Geno, has actually surprisingly been under 1.5 passing touchdowns. That might change this game. I wouldn't be shocked. That's plus 105. He has exceeded 12.5 passing first downs in 4 of his last 5 games. But the ones that I want to focus on here are passing yards and passing completions. I think he will go over because I think he'll throw a lot. I think against Atlanta, they're a worse pass defense than they are a rush defense. They're not great in either regard, but Atlanta has a bad pass rush, and I think the Seahawks will recognize that and realize that. They'll get the ball out to their weapons. DK has been visually upset. Tyler Lockett's ready to go. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been playing well. I think they're going to throw it a lot, and I thought they made a mistake running it a lot on early downs and early in that game against the Niners. I think they're going to flip that on its head. Now, San Fran, he actually had 312 yards. Now, that was a lot because they were playing from behind the entire game, but still, that could happen against Atlanta. That wouldn't be crazy. If it's a shootout or they're trailing, he's going to throw over this number, 263.5 yards. He did it against New England, 327 yards in an overtime game on the road. He did it against Miami, a better pass defense than Atlanta. New England, a better pass defense than Atlanta. Detroit, 395 yards in a trail script, right? 284 yards against the Giants in a trail script. Again, Geno is a baller. And he's throwing for a lot of yards. He's throwing chunk plays. He's throwing a lot of volume. And I don't think the books have caught up to this yet. I really don't. That the Seahawks have one of the best passing games in football, one of the most consistent, most accurate passers in football. And he's exceeded this in 5 straight games, right? 321 yards on average. You could even possibly bet over 300 and get a bunch of plus money on it. But Geno to go over his passing yards total, I think his money on top of passing completions, which you can pretty much pair up, 33, 26, 38, 28, 30. Now, some of these have been due to trail scripts, but like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout. I think there's going to be a lot of points, and I could see this game going to overtime. So, I think 30 completions around that range is fairly likely considering that 24.5 is the number. He only needs to reach 25, which he's done, far and away multiple times already this year. 5 straight games over 24.5. So I love Geno in this game. Bet the Geno overs. Talking about Joe Burrow, we're going to go under 34.5 pass attempts against the Browns. I just think the Browns are not a good offense. And when I think about this game, not only does the trend match this, right? So 4 of the last 5 games on the road, Joe Burrow has not exceeded 34.5. The only game was against the Chiefs. Okay, that's the only game. Otherwise, the Giants, they won that game. They were in control. They were fine. It was even. 28 attempts. 31 attempts against Carolina. That was a game that they threw the ball really well, and they were ahead most of the game, 31. 17 against the Ravens. That was last year. He got hurt. 32 against the Niners on the road. They won that game and put up a ton of points. That was last year. So these are on the road games. Now, if you look at the last 10, obviously he's had 39 attempts against Baltimore in a shootout, 38 in a shootout against Washington, 36 in the game against the Chiefs earlier, right? So it's actually been 4-3 in his last 7, right? If you look at it that way. But this game against the Browns, right? Games against the Browns, 31 last year against the Browns when they lost 24-3 and they were trailing. Okay, so I think the Browns are a very good pass defense, first of all. Their strength is their pass rush. Their strength is their coverage. Their strength is their ability to lock you up and to get after your quarterback. And I think the Bengals will want to minimize the chance that the Browns ruin this game through their pass rush. So that means run the ball, stay balanced, maybe throw some quick passes. But overall, let's not try to be overly reliant on Joe Burrow dropping back and throwing, because that's how we can lose. That's how we can turn it over. That's how Myles Garrett can take over the game. That's not what we want. What we want is, okay, Deshaun Watson sucks. Let Deshaun Watson beat us. If he beats us, he beats us. He's awful. This game's probably going to be defensive, so we're going to stay balanced. We're going to stay out of 3rd and long. We're going to run the ball a little bit, and we're going to protect our quarterback. And that's the game plan and the script that I see for Joe Burrow. So I see probably around 28 pass attempts, somewhere around there. I think they're going to be ahead. I think they're going to be running the ball in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I think they're going to be playing defense. I think they're going to play it conservative. And I think they're just going to come out with the win. So I don't see a big aerial affair because I don't think there's going to be a lot of points. And as we've seen, right, I would play the under in this game as well. I think it's like 41 or 41 and a half. As we've seen with Burrow, every time he goes over, it's pretty much a shootout, right? Ravens, Commanders, Chiefs, not really, but sort of, right? Then Texans last year, shootout. Played Josh Allen. So all the games where it's been low scoring, he goes under this number. And I expect it to be a low scoring game. So Joe Burrow, under 34 and a half. Saquon, over 79 and a half rushing yards. Revenge game, easy one to pick, but I think it's easy for a reason. The Giants are not a terrible run defense, but they are terrible in terms of explosive rush rate. They rank 15th in rushing yards allowed right here, as you guys can see in the corner. Or maybe you can't see. Maybe my face is blocking it. But it's 15th, and they allowed 116.3 per game. So Saquon has exceeded 79.5 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games on the road, 81.6 per game on average. This season, he got 84 against the Bucs in a game which they actually trailed. He had 147 against the Saints in a game that they barely won, but they won. And then he had 80 against the Eagles last year, actually. That was when he was on the Giants. So 2 games this year, he's gone over this number as a member of the Eagles, but it's more important to understand that he's playing the Giants, his former team. He wants to get the ball. The Eagles are, especially Nick Sirianni, pretty confident, let's say, cocky, let's say, very arrogant. And they want to prove that this was the right signing. They're going to shove it down the Giants' throat. And honestly, if you look at the matchup, like, the Giants have a good pass rush. Jalen Hurts has been pretty suspect overall as a quarterback and a passer, so you don't really want him dropping back a ton. With Jordan Mailata out at left tackle, that might hurt the run game a little bit, but I think the Eagles should focus on running the ball, focus on time of possession, because the Giants, their main thing on offense is time of possession. That's how they beat you, is they get long drives, very good play calling, they script things together, they stay balanced, they run play action. That's what the Giants do on offense very well. If the Eagles are able to take that script, flip it on its head, run the ball, have time of possession, force Daniel Jones to play from behind, that would be the way to really get ahead in this game and win this game. So I think Saquon, regardless of explosive rush, attempts, I think he's going to have attempts. I think he's going to have a couple explosives. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a couple touchdowns. I think Saquon's going to have a huge game. I would bet over 79.5, and you're getting it at a pretty good price. I wouldn't be shocked if he had 100 rushing yards. Minus 108 is a great price for this prop right here. Next up, Amon-Ra St. Brown over 72.5. I haven't been overly impressed by St. Brown this year. He hasn't had as good of a season as last year, but nonetheless, I love this matchup against the Vikings. The Vikings have arguably the best defense in football, but what they give up is quick underneath passes. Debo had a great game statistically against them. Garrett Wilson had a great game statistically against them. Smaller, underneath, quicker slot type of receivers, Brian Flores concedes those passes. Last year, St. Brown actually had good games against the Vikings. He had 144 yards last year and 106 yards last year. So, and these games were pretty close, right? One was early January, one was late December, Christmas Eve. So he was great last year against the Vikings. As Outlier suggests, he went over this number twice by 30 plus yards at 72.5 this year. In his last 10, he's gone over this number 7 out of the last 10 games. In 2024, he has dropped a little bit against Dallas, against Seattle. But this is a different type of matchup, as I suggest, with the Debo thing, with the Garrett Wilson. If you watch that London game, Garrett Wilson was getting fed target, target, target. Why? Flores is a blitzer. Flores is a guy that loves to blitz. He loves to, send guys from different angles. And the best response to that is the hot read. The best response to that is the guy right over the center, the guy that's right closest to you, which is usually Amon-Ra St. Brown, the small slot receiver, right? So I think there is definitely going to be advantage for him in this game. So I'd go over 72.5 at -113. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Let's go next up. Another Lion, David Montgomery to score a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, is plus 105, plus money. He's done this in the last 5 games. The Lions, I think, will score. I think they'll be able to run the ball fairly well. I don't expect them to dominate this game. I think the Vikings can very well win. I'm actually picking the Vikings, but this game could go either way. And in my opinion, I think the Lions will probably score 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns. I think this game will be closer to a shootout than a defensive game, given the status of the Lions defense right now without Aiden Hutchinson. I think Montgomery will score. He scored in 5 straight games on the road, 1.2 rushing touchdowns per game on average. He scored 2 against Dallas just last week. So I think Montgomery will put a touchdown in the end zone, and you're getting it at plus money. I love it. Next up, Jordan Love, our old reliable, over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's done this in 10 straight games. And yes, it's -137 for a reason. But this is still stealing. This is probably a 48, 47 total in this game. It's expected to be closer to a shootout than not. I think the Texans secondary is susceptible. Both of their linebackers are injured. They're out. Safety Jimmy Ward, out. Lassiter, corner 2, covering the wide receiver 2, out. You got Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Reed all playing. So 4 touchdowns last week. Beautiful. 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. He's had already 10 touchdowns in 3 games since returning from injury. I think he's going to put up at least 2 in this game. I know the Texans have a good defense, but the Packers can block them, I think, fairly efficiently. And if you can block the Texans, you can make plays down the field. So I wouldn't be shocked if Love had a huge game and the Packers put up 27 to 30 points. I think I favor the Packers in this game. It should be good. It should be back and forth. But even if Stroud has success and stuff, that's only going to push Love to throw more, to score more. Even if the Texans are ahead, that's even going to be better for this bet. So, yeah, Jordan Love over 1.5. This is a perfect game to bet on it. CJ Stroud, speaking of the other side, I like the over 2.5. The game script that I foresee is the Packers starting strong, the Packers getting ahead, and Love putting up some touchdowns early, and then Love having to kind of manage the game at the end, while Stroud will have to kind of throw his team back into the game. That's kind of how I think it will go. It might be just close the entire way, but I think it's going to be a bit of a duel between the young quarterbacks, and I think Stroud's going to have to fight his way back. And in that case, I think that means a lot of ad-libbing and a lot of backyard for CJ Stroud, which he's been very good at this year, but that leads to more scrambles and more runs, right? 3, 3, 4, 3, 3 rushing attempts. I think this also includes kneels as well. So if they do win, that also could be included. But Stroud has exceeded 2.5 rushing touchdowns in 5 straight games on the road. In his last 10, he's actually hit in 4 games in a row, regardless of home or away. So that's also important to understand. And he's hit in 7 of the last 10 overall, which is 70%, which is a great bet. And it's -135. Next up, Stroud to not throw an interception under a half an interception is plus money. So, I mean, yeah, he's thrown an interception in 3 of his last 4 games. But before that, he wasn't throwing picks at all, right? Still in his last 10, he's thrown 7 games without an interception. And I understand the Packers are good in terms of interceptions force. They actually rank 2nd in the NFL. But Stroud is good with ball placement. Stroud is really good at protecting the ball. And with Joe Mixon back there, I think that helps him protect the ball. He had a fluky interceptions against the Patriots. It was deflected, right? He threw a bad pick against the Bills, I would say. But honestly, it's never a bad idea to bet on Stroud, especially when it's plus 100. When it's plus 100 and you can bet Stroud and not throw a pick, one of the best at protecting the ball in football, you could do worse. Sam Darnold, under 33.5 passing attempts. So he has failed to exceed 33 passing attempts in 14 straight games, guys. 14 straight games. Now, that being said, He's only been a starter for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, right? Vikings have played 6 games. He's been, 5 games with the Vikings, 1 with the Niners, and he still went under. But regardless, so it's really 6 games in a row, right? So with Sam Darnold, though, I don't think they're going to have Sam Darnold ever throw the ball 34 times unless they're losing by like 2 or 3 scores. That's the only way. Now, I understand Darnold, the way to attack the Lions is through the air, but I still think O'Connell understands that you don't want to allow the Lions to force Darnold into mistakes. I think O'Connell still understands that Darnold is playing well, but he's not the guy you want to trust with your entire game and your entire game plan. You want to be balanced. You want to run the ball. You want to work off play action. That's where Darnold's been successful. And play action is successful thanks to a running game that gives it a complement, right? And the Lions are a good pass defense, a bad pass defense, and I think Jefferson and Addison will have a day, but I think it'll be through explosives. I think it will be through less attempts, more yards. I also think that I don't think the Vikings will be out of the game at any point. I think it will be within range. They've actually shown a great capacity to start games. We'll see how they start the game after the bye week, but they should be very well prepared. And we've actually seen Darnold play his 2 worst games against the Jets and against the Packers with 31 and 28 attempts. So I highly doubt O'Connell wants Darnold to throw it 35 times. I just don't see it, right, in an ideal world. So unless they fall behind by a bunch, which I don't foresee, I think Darnold will go under this number because I don't think the Vikings quite trust him yet to be a Tom Brady 40 passing attempt guy a game, okay? Sam Darnold, I also think he'll have a good game, though. I think he'll go over 1.5 passing touchdowns. I think that they're going to throw in the red zone because Jefferson and Addison will have great matchups against Carlton Davis or Terrion Arnold. Davis is actually beat up, so that's even better. Plus, Aiden Hutchinson's hurt, so that means the pass rush will be slow. And, Darnold's throwing a lot of touchdowns this year. He threw 0 against the Jets, but otherwise, 2, 2, 4, and 3. The game before the Jets, he threw 7 touchdowns in 2 back-to-back weeks, and they were throwing in the red zone. You specifically look at the home games, right? 4 against the Texans, 2 against the Niners. That's 6 at home this year. So they've been very good at home. Dome also helps throw the ball. Darnold has exceeded 1.5 passing touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 games. He averages 2.2. So, yeah, I think that Darnold could definitely put up 2 touchdowns in this game through the air because I think it's going to be closer to a shootout, as I've said, than it will be a defensive game. Now let's look at the Super Bowl rematch with 3 different props that I like to finish this video off. First of all, we've got Patrick Mahomes over 4.5 rushing attempts. I think Nick Bosa and Leonard Floyd will be chasing Mahomes around the field. Mahomes will probably have to play in ad-lib mode, as I could see the Niners leading this game early. But regardless, I think Mahomes is going to have to make plays through his legs because his receiving core is depleted and not very good and doesn't separate. So if that's the case, Mahomes is going to have to buy time and run. And occasionally he's going to have to run himself. So when you look at this number right now, he's hit on 6 of his last 10. Now, the important one to look at is 9, the most rushing attempts he's had in his past 10 games. Do you notice who the opponent was? Super Bowl against the Niners, 9 rushing attempts. So he's actually doubled that number against the Niners in his most recent meeting, right? So the head-to-head, 9 right there, okay? Now, it's minus 110, which is a good price. Mahomes has been running quite a bit, and I just think that with this Niners pass rush chasing him around, he's going to have to take off. He has no choice. Jawan Taylor, Morris, they're not the best tackles in the world. Clear deficiency in this game. I think the Niners get after Mahomes, and I think he takes off because of it. Jordan Mason, I like over 13.5. This was one of my favorite, I think, of the week. Minus 115. I know the Chiefs have a good defense against the run, but 13.5 for a Shanahan running back is extremely low. They hit like 120-plus yard run a game. It's just the way it goes. It's the way the scheme is. Mason has exceeded this in 6 straight games. His 26.8 longest rush per game average. Against Seattle, which he left with an injury, 38 yards was his longest rush. 34 against Arizona, 25 against New England, 18 against the Rams, which was the only one that was even close to this number, 22 and 24. So 13.5 is a low number. You don't think Mason's going to hit a 15-yard run unless he gets hurt early in the game. I feel like that's the only reason he wouldn't. So, yeah, he's going to hit at least one. I mean, McCaffrey did in the Super Bowl, at least one. So, yeah, Jordan Mason over 13.5, longest rush, -115. Pretty self-explanatory. Niners have a great run scheme. Niners have had 10 days to prepare to find a weakness in this run defense. You know that's Kyle's thing, running the football, and they don't want to put all the pressure on Brock Purdy. Speaking of Brock Purdy, I do think that Brock Purdy is going to have to be important to this game. And Brock Purdy, I could see, now these are some pretty interesting trends, that he's exceeded 251.5 passing yards in 9 of his last 11 games at home. That's pretty exceptional at -115. Now, I have too much respect for the Chiefs' passing defense to play that, but that's an interesting trend that you have to think about. Over 36.5 longest pass completion is pretty interesting as well. The Chiefs, if they do play some man, I could see them getting beat deep on one play, 9 of the last 11 games. That's interesting. The rushing ones are kind of interesting to me, right? Exceeded 8.5 longest rush in 8 of his last 9 games. That is probably the one that I like the most. It's -120. He went over this against Seattle. He went over this against Arizona. The only game he didn't is against New England, who is infamous or famous for containing quarterbacks that like to run. 11, 11, 11, 9, 21, and 9. So he goes over this regularly, 8 out of his last 9 games. Against the Chiefs, he actually went over this in the Super Bowl with a 9-yard rush, and he's been running the ball a lot as of late. Like, a lot. He's been scrambling quite a bit. So you look at his rushing yards lately, right? 19, 33 in his last 2 games, 41 against the Rams, 48 back there. But, I mean, Purdy's been running it more. And because the Chiefs, their game plan in the Super Bowl was man coverage, I could see that leaving a lane for Purdy to run. So, and honestly, the Chiefs' defensive line is not the most athletic. It's not the fastest. They have a lot of big guys up there. I could see Purdy scrambling with quickness and speed through the gaps. So those are my favorite 15 player props of week 7. I hope you guys enjoyed, man. If you did, don't forget to subscribe. Gronk spike the like button and let me know any player prop picks you have for week 7. Check out Patreon. Peace.